Welcome to this video on version 366, What's New? Highlights for F&B Inventory. There's a total of 66 enhancements in version 366. The top 10 for food and beverage are listed below. Let's take a look. Number 1 is Invoice Commit Date. So we have a new method for changing the invoice date. Previously, you had to commit the invoice and then go back and change the date. Now, you can enter in the date right when you start the invoice. Next up, number 2, net portion and recipes. So this net portion is under the yield tab. You can define the yield for each batch recipe. So in addition to volume and weight, you can now define a portion. You can set the quantity, you can set the description. And then of course now you can use that in your recipes. Next up, number 3, production transfer item behavior. It's a new item ingredient behavior where you can set items to be production transfer. You can also set stores to be production transfer stores. So for example, a commissary could be a production transfer store. So when an item is transferred out of the commissary, the ingredients of that item get reduced just in the commissary, and a finished item is added in the to store. So in this example, if this lasagna was transferred out of the commissary, we'd reduce the ingredients in the commissary and add a quantity of 1 to the receiving store. Next up, recipe links. So we've added links to recipes, and they're unlimited. You can add as many as you need. You can also launch them directly from within the YDI, or Yellow Dog Inventory client. So they could be videos to YouTube, they could be web pages, they could be files that you may launch. And then with Yellow Dog Mobile, those links are there. And if you launch them, they can launch the same web pages or the same videos. So these could either be internal for your staff, or maybe they're guest facing where you want to showcase a particular recipe or production style. Next up, under recipes, you can now have duplicate ingredients. So you could have the same ingredient multiple times, and then you can add it in the order you have to use or build the recipe. You can set individual units of measure and counts. And then when you print the recipe, it'll print out in this order. Next up, purchasing tab. So we've added a new tab for items where you can see all the purchasing activity. So now you can stay within an item to look at its activity without having to run additional reports. So you can see all the requests, the purchase orders, the receipts, invoices, transfers, and return to vendors. And you can select any activity that you want and then open that source document. Next up, number 7, emailing POs to vendor. So it's just under the print option now. There's a new button for emailing to the vendor. Now you can have multiple contacts for each vendor. And when you email your PO to them, it'll automatically add the default sales rep. It'll copy whoever committed the PO. You can of course customize the body of the email message. You can also browse the directory to add other employees, other vendor contacts, and of course you could type in custom emails as well. There's also an email history button, so at any point in time you can see all of the emails that have been communicated on this purchase order. Number 8, password reset. So we have a new option where you can go in and set a password recovery option. So you can set 2 questions, and they could be one of 7 preset questions, or you could create your own. Then, if you have a failed login attempt, if you answer those questions correctly and validate your identity, you're able to reset your own password. Next up, closeout dates. So we've added a new global ability where you can define a closeout date. So once you have a particular accounting period completed, you could go in and enter in this date, and that'll guarantee nothing gets backdated past that date. You can also set that per store as well, and it can either use the global date, or you can say things such as make the back date since my last physical, or 7, 14, 30, 60, and 90 days. So any backdated transactions that are attempted will be blocked and prevented, and you can ensure that your data won't be affected past your closeout date. Next up, we've got a number of commissary related items. First of all, in request, you could do requests to a commissary, and of course those could be created on YD Mobile, or they could be created directly in the client. You can request finished items. You can also request inventory items. You can have the request be automatic to build to your par levels. You can of course set your need by date. We've also added something we're calling a production worksheet. And this allows you to go in and take multiple requests. Let's say you had multiple restaurants feeding a commissary. You could select multiple requests for a given date, or need by date, I should say, and then it'll summarize what you need to produce based on those requests. It'll summarize the item counts. It'll summarize or show the recipe and the sub-recipe. It will also show you the production or the prep groups, so you could have your different areas where you prepare the items. Then you can print out that information by the production groups. You can also print out ingredients lists that are needed to fulfill all of this activity. And then lastly, you can now transfer based on all of those requests. So as you have multiple requests that come in, and maybe you turn it into a production group, when the product's finished and ready to be sent back to the locations, you can go in, you could select the given request. You can then add to a transfer worksheet. You can see the quantities and you can update them or change them if necessary. You can even assign a multiplier if you needed to do something like add 20% to all of this. There's also some rounding ability, so you can make sure everything rounds up to the nearest whole quantity. Then you hit one button and it creates all the transfers. Some other noticeable enhancements in 366, we have S3 images. So now you can capture pictures for recipes as well as for items, and we store those in the Amazon S3 cloud service. So you have flexibility to create as many pictures that you want. We can also automatically set items to inactivate themselves once they reach an on-hand of 0 and have no activity for a period of time, as well as we can purge out older historical POS transactional data to ensure that your database stays fast and efficient. You can also mark sessions done for your physical inventory as processed automatically when you commit each physical, so the sessions drop off automatically. There's a new auto zero ability to make your on-hands for non-inventory items be automatically zeroed out. So if you've got a central commissary that also provides supplies, you can have those supplies be auto zeroed each night. We have the ability to require that the build and due date on invoices be required, so you can guarantee all the information for accounting gets recorded. You can create transfer blocks on items to prevent certain items and certain units and measures of items. For example, you don't want them to transfer one egg. It has to be done by the dozen. We've added web links or URLs to purchasing documents. So if you have any web-based information, or maybe even an invoice system that's in the cloud and you want to link to it, you can do that. I mentioned we have the ability to round up quantities in the different purchasing documents. We also have a new recipe status for active and inactive recipes. There's a number of new reports. So we've got 7 or 8 here. That'll be helpful. And as always, we've done a number of performance improvements. You'll see noticeable speed improvements throughout the system, particularly in reports, on-hand information and calculating cost, as well as in the physical inventory process. To learn more about this version, please visit the What's New webpage. Simply go to our main website, go to support, and there's a section on What's New. On that page, there's a PDF that shows you step-by-step, screenshotted of all the new enhancements that we have. There's also a detailed new matrix listing that will be for 366 as well as the past number of versions. And you can also gain access to our customer portal there, where we have training videos on how to use these new features in 366. If you're ready to upgrade, you can go to our help site. So go to help.yellowdogsoftware.com/upgrades. There you can see frequently asked questions. You can see any of the technical requirements. You can get pre-upgrade resources and planning guides. You can also even request a sandbox, or if you have a sandbox, we can upgrade it to this version. And of course, you can self-service and schedule your upgrade. And of course, you can submit any questions to our upgrade team. Thank you so much for watching this What's New on version 366 for food and beverage.